Welcome to Weathering the Storm, Disaster Preparedness for Pet Professionals and Pet Owners. I'm Christy Keith, Senior Communications Strategist for Fear Free. And before I introduce our presenters, I'd like to take care of just a few little housekeeping items. First, we'd like to thank our friends and Fear Free sponsors at State Farm for making this webinar possible. And we'd also very much like to thank all of you for making time for this webinar this evening, especially at the end of the day like this. We're really grateful that you are here. And we were always asked, so we will tell you that the recorded version of this webinar will be available within around 1 week at fearfreepets.com/webinars. And our guests will be taking your questions after their presentation. Just a note that they can't answer specific inquiries about your account if you're a State Farm customer or anything to do with your specific claims. But questions about disaster preparedness and business insurance for disasters, all of those things, anything that's in their presentation, please, as your questions arise, just type them into the Q&A interface. You can also just post them into the chat, although it's easier for me if you put them in the Q&A, but we're here for you, so whatever's easiest for you, you can go ahead and do it that way. It's now my pleasure to introduce our presenters. Heather Paul joined State Farm in 2001 as a public affairs specialist, leading PR campaigns for State Farm focused on innovation and technology and dogs, dog bite prevention, and teaching children about the value of being kind to animals, and also, I should mention, dogs. She also coordinates the State Farm Arson Dog Program, again, dogs, which trains accelerant detection canines and handlers throughout the US and Canada. Her work with accelerant detection canine teams has resulted in her appointment to the Coalition Against Insurance Fraud Communication Committee, which is mostly about dogs, of course. Paula Gustafson is a State Farm underwriting analyst with 25 years of insurance industry experience. Born and raised in Finland, her tenure working for a Fortune 50 company and passion for small business has helped protect and empower people across the United States. This includes identifying key issues small business owners face, developing solutions to meet their unique needs, and educating consumers about coverage options. Thank you so much for being with us this evening, Heather and Paula. Please take it away.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Christy. And you'll probably all notice that I'm going to have the boring no accent, whereas Paula has got the much more extravagant sounding accent. So hopefully you'll enjoy listening to her more than me. But no matter what, our information that we share is going to be very important. This is my third webinar for Fear Free, and I'm delighted to be able to talk to you all today about something that is extremely important and something that we see every single year, including just recently, and that is preparing for disaster scenarios with your pets in mind. And that's whether you're a veterinarian, a pet professional, or a pet owner. So let me first give you a brief overview about some of the things that we're going to talk about. As I mentioned, this webinar is actually for both pet professionals as well as pet owners. We know that no matter what, a storm or severe weather doesn't care if you're a small business owner or a homeowner. It's going to impact you the same. But there are different ways that you can prepare. Some of them are going to be very similar and some of them aren't. But you also may have heard what I'm about to tell you. You may have heard it before, and that's the State Farm mission, which is to help people manage the risks of everyday life, recover from the unexpected, and realize their dreams. We've got nearly 19,000 State Farm agents who are homeowners and small business owners, just like many of you, but they're also pet owners and very passionate about protecting all family members, whether they're two-legged, four-legged, or don't have legs. So during the next hour, Paula and I are going to share information for both groups of people, pet owners as well as pet professionals. Some of the information we're going to talk about are just going to be directed primarily towards those small business owners, particularly when we talk about small business insurance. And that may be veterinarians, groomers, pet store owners, or others in the pet industry. And then we're also going to share information for those of you that are pet owners that you need to know to prepare your family, and that includes your pets for natural disaster. And of course, some of the information is going to be for both of you. So we're going to go over understanding your insurance policy, disaster preparedness and business continuity, emergency planning and evacuation with pets, and of course, recovering from the unexpected should something happen. So severe weather and natural disasters. We typically think of hurricanes and hail and tornado and lightning, severe storms, wildfires. In fact, some of these pictures are ones that I actually have taken for State Farm through my many years. I have been able to do storm weather and chasing and some other projects. So severe weather, we know, disrupts lives. It displaces families. We're impacted by financial loss. But, you know, we often think of the destruction capabilities of hurricanes and tornadoes because of the destruction of property and loss of life. But an interesting fact that a lot of people don't realize is that hail costs insurance companies the most each year. So in fact, in 2018, State Farm alone paid out more than $2.7 billion with a B for more than 280,000 home and auto claims because of hail. It is also why we send out our catastrophe response team. We do more hail than we do with hurricanes and tornadoes because of the frequency and national impact that hail has for home and auto, as well as small business. But the other thing to think about when it comes to natural disasters is that so many businesses are not prepared to respond to whether it's a man-made or a natural disaster. In fact, statistics show that of businesses that close because of a disaster, 1 in 4 never reopen. So small businesses are particularly at risk because they are likely to have all of their operations concentrated in one location that could be damaged or destroyed. We've seen this time again, whether it's a hurricane, whether it's severe storms or a tornado, or even wildfires, that because you've got your small business in one location, it can more often than anything be wiped out. One of those ways, though, that you can protect yourself as a small business owner is with small business insurance. And with that, I'm going to switch it over to Paula so she can tell you a little more about our particular insurance coverage for animal care services.
Thank you, Heather. Good evening, everybody. I'm Paula Gustafson, and this is my pleasure to be with you tonight, and it's my very first webinar with Fear Free. So I'll talk about the small business insurance coverage first. So what does a business owner's policy for animal care service professionals cover? There's the obvious, the property coverage. You know, if you have a building, contents, equipment, tools, your business policy covers that. So if your building is flattened by storms or burns down in a wildfire, you want to ensure that you have the coverage necessary to replace your building, your business personal property, or both. You may also have higher risk for theft. So if you have high valued portable medical equipment or high valued drugs, as in legal drugs, of course, for animals kept in your office. So a good alarm system is a good idea to have. And if you have one in place, please inform your insurance carrier about it. And you may be eligible for a reduced premium or a discount for your safety equipment. Then you also have the liability coverage that comes with your business owner's policy. And if somebody gets hurt on your property and you have a covered claim, your policy may respond and cover you up to that liability limit that you chose the time you purchased your policy. Then there are specific coverages for animal care services, such as accidental injury to animals. So veterinarian expenses may be covered for animals that were injured while in your care, custody, and control. And that care, custody, and control is kind of an insurance jargon, but what it means is if you have an animal with you that you are taking care of as part of your business, whether it's on your premises or away from your business premise, you would have coverage for that type of risk. And then loss of income is also known as business interruption. This is really very, very important for a small business owner. As you heard Heather say earlier, after a disaster, many small businesses never open again because of loss of income. So if your business is damaged and unable to reopen right away because of a covered claim, State Farm does provide coverage for loss of income. And this coverage can help your business open faster and can help your business avoid losing customers permanently. So super important, make sure that your insurance carrier provides business interruption or loss of income coverage. Then the other important coverages are computer property. Everybody's got a computer. You can't do anything without one anymore. Computer property coverage usually provides broader coverage for computer equipment. And it's very handy to have, and our policies include coverage for those as well. Spoilage is also very important for perishable goods. And you're thinking about, well, I'm not a food market, but when you think about the vaccinations and other temperature sensitive medication that you might have at your business, if you have a mechanical breakdown or a power outage that causes you to lose that cold, crisp temperature and these medications spoil, it's good to have coverage for that as well. So now that we know kind of in a nutshell the important coverages of what's covered, let's talk about what's not covered. And flood is it. I hope you've all heard it enough and are aware of it. Flood is not covered under most business insurance policies. And that is something that you would need to purchase coverage for through the National Flood Insurance Program. And that is managed by the Federal Emergency Management Agency, also known as FEMA. And it's very important that you look and see if your community participates in the National Flood Insurance Program. And if so, you can buy flood insurance coverage through agents that are enrolled in the NFIP Direct program. Don't wait until you know flood is coming. A flood insurance policy, as you can see on the screen, normally takes 30 days from the date of purchase to go into effect. So if you know you have the risk, buy the coverage. And then back to what is covered and what you can get coverage for. There are great coverage options to consider, and many of them are optional. Some of them may come as part of your business policy, but it's always good to know before you need it. And one of them is utility interruption. So I already talked about how if your building where you're running your business gets directly hit by a tornado or a fire or hailstorms, you are covered under your basic policy. But what if something happens away from your premises? Let's say a tornado destroys a power station or a power converter 3 miles away from your business. Your business isn't damaged, but power to your building has been cut. And without power, it's hard to run your business, right? And so utility interruption is a good coverage to consider that provides you loss of income coverage for the time that it takes for the power to be restored and get you back on your feet like nothing ever happened. Equipment breakdown is another one. A lightning may strike a mile away from your business, but it sends a power surge into your business and fries your MRI or X-ray machine. Again, your building hasn't been hit directly, but your equipment is now on the fritz, and that equipment can be very, very expensive to repair or replace. So make sure that your insurance policy comes with the equipment breakdown coverage. State Farm policies come with this without any extra cost. And so please check with your insurance carrier that you have this coverage as well. And then we already mentioned the spoilage and refrigerated products. That is usually an optional coverage on policies. And it's intended for those temperature sensitive and often expensive items when the power to your business is cut due to a disaster event or if your coolers malfunction. So whichever coverage you choose to go with, make sure that they come with that important loss of income extension, meaning that loss of income is also included, not just the item that was lost, but the resulting loss of income. Then the last item here on the slide with the cute puppy, and Heather likes dogs if you didn't get that from the introduction, the veterinarian form. So this is an optional goodwill coverage that you can purchase. It covers the animals in your care, regardless of whether you were negligent or whether this issue was your fault or not. So is what you have on your current policy enough? What if you shelter evacuated animals? Do you want to cover them as well? So things to consider here. And so while we're at it, I'm on a roll. I'm passionate about insurance. So let's look at what else you might need, which is the liability coverage. And you're thinking, well, oh, liability, what does that have to do with, disasters? So all business owners policies come with general liability coverage. So what is it? If somebody gets hurt on your property and you have a covered claim, your policy may respond up to the liability limits you chose. Remember, you're the boss, you choose the coverage limits. So for example, if a customer slips on a puddle on the floor left by a nervous, furry patient or an evacuee, and this customer falls and suffers a concussion, the customer may claim you didn't clean up the mess quickly enough and present a liability claim for the injuries they sustained in that fall. So your general liability would cover that kind of a loss. Now, the veterinarian's professional liability is coverage for bodily injury and property damage caused in connection with your practice as a veterinarian. So make sure you have it. And most basic business policies do provide coverage for the general liability that I talked about before, but don't typically provide professional liability for veterinarians. So it's very important that you professionals make sure you have professional liability in place. And an example might be helpful here. So general liability covers accidental injury to humans. But when you're treating a patient, all doctors need to have medical malpractice insurance. And that veterinarian's professional liability is medical malpractice insurance for veterinarians. If you give too much anesthesia, you may operate on the wrong pet or the wrong limb, and you get sued or have a claim, that's what you have that coverage for. And commercial liability umbrella policy, and we love acronyms at State Farm, so we call it CLUP. That is what it sounds like. It's giving you extra coverage above what you have on your business policy and your business autos. And we sell those in $1 million limits. So you can add 1 million, 2 million, 3 million, 5 million, whatever limit you need on top of your business owner's policy and your business auto policy. And there's a perfect segue then to the business autos. So you need insurance for vehicles used in the business. And think about the situation of you or your staff getting into an accident in a company car, and maybe you're at fault, you need to have coverage, or your vehicle gets pummeled by hail or flown away by a tornado. So you want to make sure you have full coverage on your vehicles as well. And then the last item to think about, workers' compensation. And that is something that may not be optional. Most states require that employers provide workers' comp for their employees in the event that an employee is injured while they're performing their duties. And so think about this. If you agree as a animal care service provider, if you agree to take on evacuated pets in the case of a disaster, Or if you're simply working with a pet that's not feeling well and is coming in for treatment, the pet is agitated, which makes them lash out and bite your staff. What insurance takes care of a work-related injury? You know it, it's workers' comp. So you need to have it. And so the one thing to remember, so I talked a lot about a lot of different coverages. You don't have to memorize it all, but have regular check-ins with your insurance agent or broker, and just to make sure that you have the right coverages that keep in pace with where you are with your business growing and evolving over the years.
And that's such important information and things to think about, because like we've mentioned before, most small business owners, State Farm agents are also small business owners. So they certainly understand what your needs are and how they can meet those needs. But if you don't have regular check-ins with them and tell them about changes to your business, do you make sure that you have coverage? When you need to have insurance, if they don't know what you have or what your situation is, they can't help you recover as quickly and as efficiently as they should and can. So now that we've got some of the small business insurance, we're going to talk a little bit more about ways that home and small business inventories can help you. So you get to listen to Paula again as she talks a little bit about inventory. And again, this is something that's going to impact both homeowners as well as small business owners.
And feel free to voice your opinion in the chat if you'd rather hear the soothing voice of Heather or me. We can switch roles, and so anytime, let me know. But let's talk about the thing that everybody loves, is doing an inventory. I know it's almost like doing taxes, but it's important to do. So as you know, you buy new stuff. Do you remember everything that you have? How will you remember it if something happens to it? So know what you have, and please, if you are operating a business out of your home, for example, keep separate inventories for your home and your business, because you're most likely filing taxes and you're having separate insurance policies. Everything is separated between home and business. So keep track of what you have. So choose a method. Thank goodness nowadays there is an app for everything. So you can certainly download an app, and some of them are free, that will help you do a digital inventory of what you have. You can also go old school, my goodness. Old school with the home inventory list. So you can either create your own spreadsheet, or you can just take pen to paper. Most insurance companies will offer a inventory checklist for you that you can fill out just to list what your possessions are. And you can also do a visual record, as in take a video, just walk through your home or walk through your business and talk through and take video of everything that you have, or take a lot of photos. And then pick an easy spot to start. So starting is always the hardest thing to do. So find an area in your home or in your business and start recording, whichever way you prefer, what you have. And include the basic information, like where did you buy it, what's the make and model, what was the cost. You don't have to account for every pair of socks, but have a general idea of how many shoes you had, how many jeans, or in a business, how many phones you had, or computers. And then for any major electronic item, it's good to have serial numbers, receipts, things like that help recreate what you had before the loss. And then some of us may have more disposable income and may have nice jewelry, art, or collectibles, and you may need to check with your insurance professional about, do you have the right kind of coverage for those kinds of high valued items? And don't forget off-site items. You may have some items in storage, in a self-storage facility, and your homeowner's insurance probably covers those. And you can also endorse your business policy to cover items that are away from your business. And then don't get overwhelmed. Just document the best you can. Find the most important, the most handy method of documenting items that's available to you, and keep receipts. Don't forget to include the items that are in your basement, so out of sight, out of mind, the attic, the garage, any shed or she shed, because you know those can burn. Make sure that you are logging them the best you can. Even having a partial inventory is better than not having any. And if you can, keep a copy of your inventory somewhere else than your home or office, so that if your home or office gets destroyed, that your documentation doesn't get destroyed with it. So I've talked for a while. I think I'll turn it back over to Heather now.
Did you really drop a she shed?
I did.
Nice reference. Good job on that one. So, as Paula mentioned, having a home inventory, a small business inventory, either one is very important. And certainly if you're a small business owner, you're a homeowner, so you could probably have both. There are tools that are out there specifically designed to help small business owners with disaster, severe weather, emergency prep, and recovery. The great thing about it is that this is a free program. And if you are a homeowner, you can certainly download and use a lot of these tools too, particularly when it comes to home inventory. So don't think that just because it is disaster preparedness business protection, that it's off limits for homeowners. Either of these two tools I'm about to talk about are available for business, whether you're a business owner or a homeowner. And the first one that I'll talk about is severe weather emergency prep, also known as Easy Prep. So State Farm is a member of the Insurance Institute for Business and Home Safety. Like Paula said, we like acronyms, so we refer to it as IBHS. And they are a nonprofit scientific research and communications organization that is funded by property insurance companies. They actually conduct building safety and mitigation research. In fact, in the United States and South Carolina, they have the largest building that can actually build 2 full-size homes in it and have hurricane force winds up to Category 3 for testing that they do. They can also reproduce hail to see what type of damage hail will produce onto homes. And that helps us get information on how we can help people recover. But one of the other programs that they have is creating tools like Easy Prep to help small business owners with public education materials. They want to be able to provide this type of information to help for those recovery efforts. You can always go to disastersafety.org, which is their website, to see information related to everything from preparing for various disaster scenarios to, of course, downloading Easy Prep. So Easy Prep is an emergency preparedness program that will help small businesses stay open for business. It includes customizable checklists that will help small business owners build a plan that will help to respond to any disruptions caused by severe weather. And specifically, Easy Prep is broken up into different plans based off of timing before off season up until the actual event. So you'll see plans in here for off season. If you're in a hurricane prone area, it's going to be, there's going to be plans in place for those seasons when it's not time for a hurricane. 5 days before a storm event, 72 hours before a storm event, 24 to 48 hours before the event, during and immediately after a storm, as well as recovery after an incident, longer term planning and repairs, and it even provides a supply checklist so that you know what you need to keep your business running or be able to recover immediately afterwards. So again, this is a free program that you can go online, courtesy of State Farm as well as other insurance companies, and download and find this. And outside of having a disaster preparedness plan is business continuity planning. So I always ask people, do you have a plan in place? We regularly, and at working in a corporate building, in a corporate facility, every year we have to do business continuity planning, and that's everything from who do you call next in the call tree on your team or with your businesses, to where are you going to meet if there's a disaster? How do you check in on the people that you work with? If you're a small business owner, how do you know what is happening with your employees? So even little things like inventory, evacuation plan. Do you have an evacuation plan not only for your people, but also animals that you may have in your building? How do you notify your customers that you have had a disruption? So again, Open for Business is a free customizable toolkit that is designed to help plan for any type of business interruption. So you can reopen and resume operations as quickly as possible after a disaster. It is available in English as well as Spanish, and as you can see on here, it has an online component, and it also is a mobile app that you can download and be able to have all that information on your phone should you need it. So again, both of these tools will be available. If you didn't get down this address when the webinar comes out in a week or so, you'll be able to have access to it then. Or at the very least, you can go to disastersafety.org, which is pretty easy to remember, and get the information for Open for Business as well as Easy Prep. So we've prepared for small businesses. Now let's prepare for pet evacuation should something happen. Now, it's always critical for people to become familiar with the types of disasters that could affect them, and consider options for how they're going to provide care for people and for pets. There are wildfires is one of those that can happen anywhere. They're obviously more predominant in areas where there's interactions with the wildfire urban interface, where you've got homes and businesses that are in beautiful areas where there's lots of trees. Hurricanes are going to be primarily on the coastlines, whereas the Midwest, we're going to see more hail and high wind from tornadoes. So whether you're new to the area, just moved, or even if it's been a while since you've had a storm go through your area, know what types of perils you are prone to in your area. That will help you to prepare. So first thing we need to do is make sure that we've got identification for your pet. It's critical that this is one of the very first things that you do, and it will increase your chance of being reunited with your pet if they get lost. So make sure that your pet wears a collar and that the tags are up to date with contact information. If your tags are worn down and you can't read the name or number of on your pet's tag, get a new one. It's there, you can get them anywhere. They're relatively inexpensive, but it could save you from losing your pet in a disaster scenario. Another good thing is microchipping your pet. Make sure also that you register the microchip with the manufacturer and keep your contact information up to date with the microchip company. I think we've all heard situations where you've got a microchipped pet. Either that pet gets lost and you've moved, the microchip company has difficulty finding you because it may have old information. So keep that up to date. Another good tip is to keep a pet carrier on hand for each of your pets. Write their name, your name, and contact information, and have that on each carrier. So if you are separated from your pet in one way or another, somebody can contact you. Another good tip is to prepare handouts with identification information and a photo in case you're separated from your pet. Have those printed off and on hand, ready to pass out if should you need it in the event of an evacuation. And probably one of the more important things is, in addition to those, is to have a pet evacuation kit, or what we commonly refer to as a bug out bag. Preparing a disaster kit for your pet will ensure that in a chaotic situation like an evacuation, things will go much smoother. So when you're making the kit, think about your pet's basic needs. What kind of food do they have? Prescriptions, any paperwork. Have documents, medications, and food stored in a waterproof container. A lot of events, is particularly related to hurricanes, are both a wind and water event, and it doesn't do any good to have documentation or important medication if it's waterlogged and damaged because of that. So keep those in waterproof containers. In your bug out bag, in your preparation kit, have a leash, collar with ID or harness, an appropriate size pet carrier with beddings and toys. Keep food, again, in an airtight waterproof container and enough water for at least 2 weeks for each of your pet. You may want to also have food in water bowls and a manual can opener, because in some situations you're not going to have access to electricity. Plastic bags for your dog poop, or litter box and litter for your cats. Cleaning supplies for any accidents that may have, so paper towels, plastic bags, or disinfectant. And medication for at least 2 weeks, along with instructions and treats that could be used to give the medication. As far as documentation, keep photocopied veterinary records with you so that if you need to either board them somewhere, or if you're staying in a hotel, a lot of times they're going to need to see that you've got vaccines, so keep those handy. Any registration information, recent photos of your pet, and of course, contact information for you, friends, or relatives. Or if you board your pet somewhere, if you're a veterinarian or a boarding facility and you're taking in pets for people that are evacuating, make sure that you've got things down as to what their feeding schedule is, medications, and any known allergies. And of course, I can't stress enough, microchip information and your contact information. And, you know, one cool idea that I'm going to mention, and this is something that maybe some of you do, but in the Q&A or chat section, feel free to put in ideas or things, that best practices that maybe you have had, whether you're a small business owner who's been in an evacuation scenario, or if you're a pet owner. Put those in, because those will help generate a lot of good ideas for other people in these types of situations. But one of those ideas for small business owners, consider hosting a bug out or disaster prep event for your clients. You know, you can have everybody come together, including kids, and they can create a kit together. That way they can ask questions and really be prepared in advance of a storm. It doesn't take a lot to do something like that. It's a great way to also connect with your clients.
All right, or you can just call Heather and she'll figure it out for you. All kidding aside. But so Heather did give you a lot of good information about what to do and how to prep. So the key here is to plan. So plan before the disaster strikes, and just figure out where you and your pets will go. So if you're a pet owner, don't wait until it's too late. And remember to take your pet's emergency kit with you. And be aware that pets may not be allowed in local human shelters unless they are service animals. You can also contact your local FEMA emergency management office and ask if they offer accommodations for pet owners and their pets. And if you need additional information about accommodations for your pets, you can also visit the Humane Society of the United States website. Find links to websites that can help you identify pet-friendly lodging in your area. And then also you can contact the local veterinary clinics, boarding facilities, or local animal shelters for some place to get your pets to be safe, or family and friends. They're always there for you, right? And so if your friends or family are outside of the evacuation area, they would be a great place to take your pet to. Now, crating, that's an important piece of keeping your animals safe. So keep your dog or cat accustomed to being crated during normal life. And that is a skill then that will help them tremendously if you are ever displaced. And during your evacuation, if you have any time, crate the dogs and or cats, place them near an exit, leash up a dog, so you can literally grab and run out the door, and stay as calm as possible. So don't let the animals know that you're running around with your hair on fire, because they will read your emotions and they will take it in. Realize that your animals will likely be traumatized and they may act differently during a disaster, even before it. Sometimes they can sense it. And even after the disaster, they may just seem like their personality is a little off. And that's okay and normal. Now, if you are a small business owner, so what do you need to consider? Think about the insurance issues again. If you decide to accept animals at your facility during an evacuation, can you do it safely? Do you have a way to keep your staff and the animals safe? Remember that you may now be held liable for injury to those animals and even their owners. So think about how does your insurance policy respond? You're not normally running an evacuation center as a day-to-day business. So how does it respond? So the good news is that liability coverage usually provides protection for accidental injury or property damage for which you have found to be liable. So that's the key item here. Were you at fault? If you were at fault, your liability insurance will usually kick in. Then you have the optional coverages that we had some chat questions about. Can you cover the animals that are in your custody or control? You can purchase animal or veterinarian forms, or we call them inland marines. They're basically, it's a funny name for a coverage, but this is a kind of a goodwill coverage that you can buy to cover all the animals in your care. It covers theft and escape and death, even death caused by flood, even though we just talked about how flood is not covered, but there are some special coverage forms that you can purchase that will also cover at least the animals for flood and earthquake. And those policies, they pay up to the coverage limit you selected. So you always choose the limits, because you're the boss. And so that's what the insurance policy will pay for. Now, as to then, on the next slide here, we'll talk about what happens after the storm. So, tips of what to do after the storm. When it's safe to do so, make some temporary repairs to the damaged property. So if you have a gaping hole in the roof or a window that's busted, try to patch them, cover them with either plywood, plastic, whatever makes sense, so that there's no more rain or other elements or even some uninvited critters coming in to your building. And so, and depending on your insurance coverage, these repairs are often something that are covered. Keep the receipts for any items that you've purchased, like tarps or plywood or any of the supplies to make those repairs. Then contact your insurance agent to determine what to do next. Is this loss covered? Is it a flood? Or is it a tornado or a hailstorm or a fire? Document the damage by taking pictures, and make sure to help with the claims process. If you're throwing any items out, document that. You can save the receipts, you can photograph the item, whatever it takes to just kind of give an idea of what you had to toss out. Now, we ask that you don't throw out any very expensive items, until your claim representative says that it's okay to do so. They may need to inspect those items before they're disposed of. And then thing to remember, if you have very expensive small valuables like jewelry, and you have a hole in the wall or in the roof or a window is gone, make sure that you take those items to a place of safety to avoid any theft and unfortunate loss there. And then we talked about the spoilage coverage a few times. So your homeowners and business policy, they may cover spoiled food and other damages that result from power outages. So check with your insurance company to see if your policy covers damages from those type of losses. And now I'll turn it back over to Heather.
Wonderful. Thank you, Paula. That was great information. So how many times have you unfortunately seen, after a hailstorm or weather event, seen all kinds of trucks loaded up with people going through your neighborhood, or people knocking on your door telling you that they're there to help you with your roof, or they're a contractor? It happens all the time, but unfortunately, many insurance fraudsters prey on disaster victims at a time when they're already emotionally devastated, and that's when they're most susceptible to being scammed. Unfortunately, it happens, but there are ways that you can protect yourself if they've presented themselves as a contractor and it's not somebody you're familiar with. Keep in mind that anytime that a contractor comes up to your home and identifies themselves as a licensed contractor or is reputable without any backing information, and takes your money and run, that is insurance fraud and it is a felony. So what should you do? Well, a good way to understand and recognize the work that you're paying for will be done is to hire a reputable contractor. The best way to find that is to contact your local home builders association or remodeling council for a directory of who those reputable contractors are. And with that, you'll want to make sure that those contractors are licensed, registered, and insured. Again, only deal with reputable contractors. And there's a lot of great, good, reputable contractors in the state. Definitely be wary of any of those that try to capitalize on the storm. Even better is if you can find a local contractor. So, you know, there's following storms, we see it all the time where there's contractors or people that come from other states and say that they can fix your roof or do repairs. They'll take a down deposit and you'll never see from them again. And it's sad and it's unfortunate that that happens. But another great way is to check with your Chamber of Commerce or Better Business Bureau. They will obviously also have experience with reputable contractors that can handle your repairs. If you decide to use a contractor, make sure that you get a receipt for the cost of labor and any materials that you can give to your claim representative. Do not have any repairs done until you discuss them with your insurance claim representative first. They will also be able to help guide you on reputable contractors. And it's always a best practices, just like with anything else, to get different estimates. Don't always go with the first vehicle that pulls up to your house and says that they see hail damage on your roof and that they can fix it for cheaper than anybody else. That should be a big red flag right there. Insist on getting a written contract that includes the contractor's contact information, a project timeline, a payment schedule, and any permits that may be required. So you all have access, if you're a State Farm customer already, to a contractor locator that is on the State Farm website. It is available through your online statefarm.com account, and it will provide a list of contractors that State Farm knows and has worked with. So good practice. Keep in mind, though, that State Farm does not warrant or guarantee the performance of any contractor in the network service. So you've recovered, the storm has passed through, and you realize that unfortunately you have lost your pets. You've been separated from them. and that's the panic motion movement time period for all of us when we don't have our pet with us. So what should you do if you are separated for your lost pet? Well, first you want to make sure that your family is in a safe location even before you begin your search. If you're in a shelter that houses pets, inform one of the pet caretakers and give the pet caretaker your pre-made missing pet handout, those that we had you make for your bug out bag. Once you've been cleared to leave the shelter and return home, contact animal control about your lost pet, or contact a lot of different organizations are available to help identify and reconnect pets and their pet parents. And last, call the microchip company to make sure all the information about you and your pet is up to date and current, so that if your pet is found, they can locate you. And like I mentioned, there's a lot of online resources that are available to search for a lost pet. So connect with other members in your community, make them aware that you're looking for your pet, and hopefully you'll be able to be reunited quickly. So I wanted to mention one example. I'm sure that several of you have probably are hopefully sharing great information about times when you may have had to evacuate or knew some best practices. But here's a situation that has been recent. Of course, we all have heard, and some of you may have even experienced the devastating wildfires that took place in California last year. And one of those wildfires was the Woolsey fire in Southern California that happened on started November 8th, 2018, and unfortunately burned down nearly 97,000 acres of land. That fire alone destroyed 1,643 structures, resulted in the death of 3 people, and unfortunately also prompted the evacuation of more than 295,000 people in LA and Ventura counties. And in this scenario, a lot of, as oftentimes happens, the Red Cross Emergency Evacuation Center set up in a local community center or community college, and they set it up in a gym and dorm rooms. But typically the Red Cross doesn't allow pets inside their shelters. We know that it is really difficult when you are trying to evacuate. You're concerned about, again, your human family members and your 4-legged furry friends. And the last thing you want to do is go to an evacuation center and have to give up your pet or leave them behind. So in this case, when these evacuees from the wildfires were evacuated to Pierce College, they promptly showed up and realized that if they did not have a carrier for their, or crate for their pet, that their pet was not going to be allowed to stay with them. So when State Farm agents heard about that, they went out and did not want to have people turned away from the shelter. They went out on their own and purchased more than 100 kennels so that dogs and cats could stay in the shelter with their pets. That makes a huge difference when you're in a moment of panic. And we're so thankful and proud of those agents to recognize that those are family members too. Doesn't matter if they've got 2 legs or 4 legs. So really wonderful to be able to have those agents reach out in that time of need. But also recognize the veterinarians, and we see this time and time again, that veterinarians with the Veterinary Angels Medical Center in the nearby Agora Hills evacuated their own practice, but actually created a MASH tent inside of Pierce College's gym to help treat those injured and displaced animals. Pierce College ended up opening its pens and stables to house over 300 animals displaced during this particular fire. That included horses, donkeys, sheep, chickens, and basically every stall was filled. So wonderful example of the community with, veterinarians, insurance agents, community colleges coming together to try to help keep people and their pets together after a disaster. So we know that we've given you a lot of information, but we also want to take some time to learn about some best practices that all of you may have had. You've probably all Hopefully you've not had to evacuate, but some of you may have. So let us know what kind of best practices you've had in various disaster scenarios. I see one, Mary Callahan has had a great suggestion. One suggestion for pet owners is keeping a card in your wallet with information for a trusted pet caregiver in the event you're unable to return home and your pet is home alone. Great, and especially in a car accident, you can have to go straight to the hospital. That's excellent, great idea. Katie says, if the area after the disaster is uninhabitable or unsafe for your animal, does insurance coverage cover accommodations for either boarding your animal or safety equipment for your animal, such as booties or litter boxes?
And that one is a good question. It really depends on your insurance policy and who you have it with. And I don't know, Heather, if you've had that particular question in your previous presentations. I'm thinking that this would be considered a regular living expense.
It would be considered a living expense, yep.
So most likely, yes. This would be something that would be covered. And then I think that, Heather, there were a lot of good tips shared in the chat function, and a lot of suggestions for places to go and pet-friendly hotels and all of that. So we've had a very active group here with a lot of great suggestions. Now, are there any questions that, we have 4 minutes left, any more questions that anybody has on their mind that we can answer?
Since there aren't any other questions yet, at least from our audience, I have a question. As someone who has large dogs, I cannot fit all my dogs in crates in my vehicle. And where I live now is extremely low risk that I'd ever have to evacuate. But I used to live in California where earthquakes and wildfires and where I was living floods were often a big risk. And I was just wondering if you had any guidance on, you know, really stopping and thinking about, sure, your vehicle's fine if you're taking one pet to the vet, but what exactly do you do? Clearly, you'll have to put them in without a crate, which presents its own set of risks. Do you have any insight on that or thoughts?
If you're in that situation where you need to evacuate, and again, if there's evacuation orders, we always highly recommend that you follow local emergency management suggestions rather than stay behind. We see so many people that unfortunately lose their life staying behind because they're not prepared. In that type of situation, if you need to evacuate and you're unable to fit crates into your car, your vehicle, by all means, most important thing is for you to evacuate with your pets. There's a lot of organizations, the Humane Society, as well as many others that are there to help you to provide some of those things that you may need afterwards. And if it's that you need a crate, we are a wonderful community of people, and there's so many that are willing to help each other in those times of need. So get out quickly and safely. If you have to put all your animals into your vehicle to be able to get out, then there will be resources that will be able to help you afterwards.
That's great, thanks. Anybody else have any questions? If not, looks like we don't. I just want to so much thank you both for being here tonight and everyone who has been with us, and of course, State Farm for making this presentation possible. I hope no one ever needs the information that they got in this presentation, but with everything that we've been seeing recently, hurricanes, there may be another hurricane forming now, California wildfires, all the disasters that we just can't predict. It's really valuable to all of us to have this information, and I'm so grateful to you both for sharing it with us. Okay, everyone, thank you so much and good night.